Hi everybody, welcome back to the second episode of the Backseat Climbing Podcast. Firstly, I'd like to talk about our first episode. Actually did surprisingly well. I didn't expect it to have the sort of support that it managed to garner. Yeah, I had loads of really good feedback on it from like some really cool people, loads of people in the community, and it was quite nice to hear some fucking idiot yap for 40 minutes actually garner some people's attention. Apologies for the fact that I've not made an episode since about April now. That is primarily due to me having exams and, fucking life takes over, doesn't it, really? In my own climbing, what I've been doing, well, it's limestone season here in the UK, so I've been able to get out on that. Just sort of like not really actually had that much time to climb at the moment, but trying to get out as much as possible, ticking away on some nice little boulder projects. I think today, primarily today's news, I'm going to be talking about the commercialization of climbing and kind of the direction I think we're heading. And I kind of don't want to repeat myself because I think influencers probably will rear its head here. And I guess this is kind of sparked most recently by something that happened, and it kind of I thought about it for quite a while, and I don't know. I just wanted to express my thoughts and opinions. You might not agree with me. You're not entitled to. Please, this podcast is designed to perpetuate this sort of discussion because I do think it's really important. Fundamentally, I really do love climbing, and I really care about it, and that's why I'm making this podcast. Try and share these ideas, get this sort of conversation going. So yeah, let's get into it. So, the thing I would kind of like to talk on and touch on in today's podcast would be this latest sort of like micro beef we've had. Firstly, as much as on the backseat grading account, I do like to stir the pot a rather large amount. I'd just like to say I don't really mean any like well wishes, and I think instead of using this as like, hey, this is like a beef, it's more so like a little bit of an example of different philosophies and ideologies within climbing, and how no one is particularly right, but I think there is very much an ideology that is preferred by corporations and Instagram, and I think most of you will know which one I'm talking about. It's Bosi and Aidan Roberts. So effectively, for some background on this, Aidan Roberts has done two really hard problems lately, probably both sitting in the Font 9A V17 range, one of them being Spots of Time. It's this beautiful boulder up in the Helvellyn region of the Lake District, very close to where you grew up, with this awesome style, like very sucking in on these really terrible crimps. I mean, I think they were described as like the worst holds you could use at this sort of angle with like 3 fingers. It's unbelievable, like a really beautiful boulder. And I think more relevantly to this boulder was what it meant to Aidan, right? The way he would describe this boulder on his podcast and within the post was this truly like unbelievable experience he had. Like this boulder, you can see very close to like where he grew up in Rydal in the Lake District. He would like named it after this author who grew up like locally, and there's like a museum about him, and Spots of Time was a poem that he wrote about how you have these like spots of time in which you kind of reminisce on like the time that you didn't like really value and whatnot. I'm probably butchering it, but anyway, and primarily his discussion was upon how he didn't want this boulder and this achievement he had to be like diminished down to its difficulty and its, well, quite frankly, its grade of probably 9A. And he said that this experience was so valuable and he wanted to share that experience primarily and like what he worked upon. And kind of initially reading this, a lot of what I put the parallels towards was who has been mentioned many times on this podcast, who is Dan Varian. There's a brilliant podcast he did with Niall Grimes on Crack Jam, where he talks about him doing Bombadil, which was this boulder up in Northumberland. It's this 8B plus high ball with a really hard like lock move off this pocket. And he talks about how this boulder was like you could see it where he grew up, and it was always there and it was hiding, and it was this like amazing experience when he did it. There's video of him doing it on Flickr, and I feel like Varian's quite a reserved guy in terms of his emotion. Like this video of him doing the prow and life on hold, and he's like, oh fucking hell yeah. and he's like, it's hard to see emotion, but I think then it was like a really beautiful moment for him, and how this boulder really impacted him. And he gave it the grade of AB+, which it isn't, is probably closer to like 8C-ish. I mean, it is an amazing boulder, like a stunning line, and I think like he didn't, again, like Varian wouldn't get much press anyway because he's not the top, but I don't think he would have given it anything more, because he doesn't really care. And I think Aidan, as much as like Dan Varian, I suppose, was in his way like his protege, probably took a bit of that inspiration from him. But I think it was how this is like his very own motivation to climb. This wasn't because he thought he would get more sponsors out of this, or he thought he would get any like Instagram recognition, right? He took a break off Instagram. Like, this was his thing. He did this because he really wanted to do it. And I think it's really nice. It was in like a super isolated area, like nobody around. Like, it was a first ascent. There was no other lines on this block. It was like a very personal process for him, and I think that is like very, very admirable to do a boulder now with like nobody else watching, and just no, like, he didn't want recognition from this. He didn't really. I think if it was up to him, he wouldn't give it a grade, but I think there's possibly some expectation of people to do so. And I think what I gained from this post, and actually Cursed Climbing, who's like, I'd say like a philosophy account on Instagram with some admittedly like harsh views potentially sometimes, wrote about this, and I'd really recommend actually checking out his Substack page. Actually, he's far more like whimsical and intelligent than I am. Like, very, very writes really, really well about climbing, and he talked about how like Aidan like was recognizing like the gamification of climbing. And I think this is something that I actually like hear a lot about, like the way new climbers get into it is like a video game, right? It's why you see a lot of like people who are into traditional video games get into climbing, because there's like a constant next level, and how potentially that is like a dangerous motivation to have within climbing. I think I often talk about this with like my friends, and I, as you may have worked out, the people I climb around, and the person I am fundamentally, like, I'm not a very like serious person, but I had like a really nice discussion on the way to Blackwell Dale with a friend of mine about like what his intrinsic motivation for climbing is. And I know like these terms get thrown around a lot, and anyway, we kind of like brought it down to this crux of like the climbing is one thing and the difficulty is one thing, but for him it was like, like I want a really good day out of it. Like I want to like go and feel like I'm on a bit of an adventure. I want to climb something really high quality. And it was even small things. Like, he was really adamant that like if the thing had a top out, that would be really like, that really affected his motivation. So like peak limestone, which generally doesn't top out, was like not that motivating to him, and he wanted like to feel like he got to the top of something, which I found really admirable. He has this like motivation, and this is what he wants to do. And I think going back to like Aidan there, like this, obviously he wants that element of difficulty, otherwise he would potter around at St. B's on like high sevens, right? He wants that really element of top level difficulty, but I think as well as that, he wants something that's his own. Like, he wants to climb this unbelievable like line, and I think so relevantly it's like in the Lake District, and this movement that just flows and works. And I think we saw that with Burner Dreams, right? He was very vocal on his podcast about how he didn't like it when all the cameras were around, and I think it like fundamentally it like harpens back to his like intrinsic and own motivations for climbing. And I think that's like that's super admirable, right? And this is like, I actually didn't listen to the full episode, but I maybe should have in preparation for this. Is him and Sam Pryor, his co-host, worked out their they did this podcast with this psychologist where they worked out their like intrinsic motivations for it. I possibly should have listened to that beforehand to actually gauge, and I can really only suspect like why he like really enjoyed it. Maybe there's like another reason he's not telling us. Maybe he is like completely opposite, and Patagonia paid him 45 million to tell him this this unbelievable story about climbing. And I think all of that and what I've said there, and what we saw was something which, I don't know, you can either take it one of two ways, but then I'll introduce like the second character to the story. And just a forward, I don't want to preface Bosi like he was the villain here. I'm sure he like really didn't have these sorts of intentions, and I'm sure he really didn't like think any of this happened. I really am sure he's like a fine person in actuality. And what happened was, this video was uploaded by Aidan. Or sorry, this post was uploaded by Aidan. And not gonna lie, it was a very open secret that he had done this boulder. And he had talked about it. There had never been a grade, and he still didn't give the grade in the post, which is very admirable, despite his good friend Jim Pope giving it font 9A, I think, on his behalf, which was quite funny. Very Gaskins-esque. And we saw him upload this post, and it was really nice word, and he wrote all about it, as I mentioned before. And then 2 hours later, we got another post, which was Spots of Time, and it was like session 1, video uploaded now, and I was like, wow, okay, like, fair, you know what, like, okay, like, let's see what this video is about. And the video was titled 9A/V17 Spots of Time Session 1. And it was Bosi, like a very poorly cut together video of like a one fixed angle, Bosi like doing singular moves on this problem. And all I could think was, well, why? Like, why now, bro? And I think it's because, like, at the top of British climbing, there's 10 people, like less than that maybe, that have done 8C and above in this country. And so it's a very small community of top level climbers. And all I could think was, you're uploading this as an algorithmic play. And like, it came across in a way like he was trying to take away some of this, like, Aidan's like really admirable and very like interesting story on his own motivations, and take that away and direct it to, oh, here's what I think the other like top level climber in the UK, because fundamentally it's those two and then like a bit of a gap in the UK. And like, I just couldn't really wrap my head around it. I talked to Leo Skinner about this, a friend of mine, and I said, fucking, it feels very algorithmic, like a very algorithmic play to do this. And I can only speculate why he did this and why he like uploaded on that day. But it was like the classic, Daniel Woods was a bastard for doing this sort of thing, where he'd upload like Alphane and then Alphane, then the grade, and then like a paragraph, and you didn't really know if he had or he hadn't done it. And I'm not saying Bosi did that, because he did put Spots of Time session 1, but it was kind of like a bit trying to capitalise on that. And I think I kind of wouldn't have had a problem with this, like, but upload it a day later. He uploaded it 2 hours after Aidan's post, and like, I don't think this was a coincidence either, because he had this footage on his Will's Whispers account. He had this footage since April, and as somebody who I work with the YouTube channel myself, like, I know how long these sorts of edits take, and that was like a first pass edit level edit. Like, he cut up clips and uploaded them, and then maybe did a little bit to the audio. Like, there was nothing like that would have taken like 6 weeks to edit, right? Like, this was a play to design to capitalize on the success of Aidan's story about this. And I just can't help but think like how out of touch that is of whoever, if it is Bosi, or if Bosi's got a management team working for him. Like, why, guys? Like, it was very strange to do something like that. And I think all I can say is like, why do this? And I did comment on his post, like on the Backseat Grading account, being like, Aidan, Bosi will do fucking anything to take the limelight away from Aidan. And I think it was because as well, he did Isles of Wonder and downgraded it before Mastery came out, which is fine, because there was like a long gap, and I don't really have a problem with him doing that, but it just made the movie a little bit awkward, because it was originally actually supposed to be a movie about doing Isle Sit, and he downgraded it. And I possibly still think Isle Sit is 80 plus, right? It's one person's opinion, you know, what can you do? And I think it's interesting why he made that play. Like, if he had uploaded it like today or yesterday, fine. It's like a day after, it's like a very, that would have been, you know, fine. Like, it's still a little bit like, okay, it's kind of close, but you know what, Aidan's had his day, right? Like, we got a Sean Rabbitoux 8B plus FA, we had that woman doing 9B with no knee bar pad as a personal challenge, like a beast. We had a Jonathan Seagrest 9B yesterday, actually. Like, loads of stuff's happened, right? And I don't know, like, I think it was quite funny, because I uploaded that comment like, Bosi will do anything to take the limelight, and Matt Bird, Bosi's manager, Band of Birds, liked the comment, which I don't know if they thought, like, he had either one of two things. One, he was like, okay, he's taking the piss, whatever. Two, he knew like exactly what he had done, because I imagine Banderbirds or Mattbird has some word in the way Bosi's Instagram schedule is. And I think it all kind of comes with a head of like a perfect parallel between the types of athletes that Bosi and Aidan are, right? We saw the way that Bosi went to Burden of Dreams, right? He went and he trained on this replica to do that boulder and leave. And he did that boulder not because of his own motivation, but because it was in 9A. And Bosi's motivation is to climb hard, and that's absolutely fine. Bosi, I think, seemingly from an external perspective, and I don't know what their motivations are at all, but seemingly he wants to climb 9A. He wants to be the best climber in the world, and I think that's represented in a few ways. Number one, his trips to do Burden of Dreams and Sleepwalker. Both were out there to try one 9A boulder, and if Return of the Sleepwalker was 8C+, do I think he would have gone all the way out there? Probably not. He probably would have gone to try Megatron or whatever. Like, I think he's out there for the grade and not so much the quality. Despite Burden of Dreams and Return of the Sleepwalker both being high quality lines, I think his trip to the Czech, despite actually getting rained off Excalibur, to be fair, to go and try it, but the trip to the Czech to try Terra Nova, which is a horrendous boulder, like in terms of quality, it's grim. It's a fucking limestone traverse on low quality limestone, as well as that his like just obsession with Raven's Tour, and we saw like Wild South 8C there, boulder, and he's got this Burden of Nightmares project. Like, Raven's Tour is a cool crack, but fuck me, as opposed to like Swiss granite or like even like the rock quality of the lakes or North Wales or Scotland, like any of these, like I don't know, I just can't help but think his motivation lies more so in the inherent difficulty of a problem, and I think partly like external sources. And I think that's evident as well in like his live streams, you know, like we saw like the way he live streamed all of these things. And I don't want Bosi to be painted as the villain here, right? And I think when thinking about all of this and the way this was like a very algorithmic play move, I kind of considered what the future of professional athletes and the way climbing commercially is going. In the last podcast, if you listen to it, I made a very, very big case for the fact that there is money in climbing. It's just not distributed properly, and the way we value athletes is very interesting, because people that fundamentally do more for the sport get paid less than like influencers or whatever. And I think what this kind of showed me was the fact that, right, like Aidan, I think they did make a podcast on money, right, and the way like athletes are paid and whatnot, and how like they should start a union. And I think it's interesting to see, like, will Bosi get paid more money because he is willing to do stuff like that? Because I think it's interesting that you'll be pushed to do stuff like that, and also stay in this like very fundamentally close knit community. Like, I think people don't quite realise actually how small the high level climbing community is in terms of like individuals within it. Like, it's very much an everyone knows everyone, and that's like exemplified by like Sheffield being such a tight knit community. Like, a majority of the people that have climbed 8B and above in this country, like men and women, will at some point, I would be willing to bet, have been based out of Sheffield or trained in the schoolroom and been part of this community at some point. And it's very close knit, and then you're kind of expected to be like, hey, I'm gonna like torpedo your ascent to get some clout, but it's all for the marketing. Like, is this really like the way we want to go, where people have kind of been forced to do these like little dick moves? And I don't know if Bosi was forced. This could have just been him. Like, there's really no way of knowing. I mean, I'm sure he can answer for that. And I often consider like, hey, we've got this like. We've got this money, right, and this pit of money, and it's how much the North Face wants to give away. And if you're going to get paid more, if the North Face are going to get more in revenue by you doing big numbers and like really playing the algorithm with your posts, then you know what, fair. And I think it's interesting because like top level athletes, like, what are their ways of advertising what they've done? Okay, there's Instagram, like Instagram posts, and that generally, like you can post like 7 times about this problem you've done, and no matter how hard it is, by the second post, third post, you're going to see like a huge drop off in the number of like interactions and like potential exposure, because people really like just like, okay, you've done this, like I know there's like, and then it's generally like I've done this, and then you can like you can trail the footy, I'd say. Like I'd say that's like a big trend lately. Like I'm struggling. I think the last like big level ascent that was done and the footage was included was probably Elias's ascent of Burden of Dreams. That was probably the last one where we were like, fuck. But even before that, I can't really think of a time where we've had a solidly hard FA or solidly hard ascent of like a top level climb, at least boulder, and we've immediately had the footage. Like that is definitely like a trend. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because I think generally it results in better films. I think you can take the piss. Simon Lorenzi's Burden of Dreams, Alfane film is a fucking piss take for what was the 4th ascent of 40-minute film. And I'm aware that film was very like heartfelt, right? There was like, of course, like very, very like heartstringy moments in that. So fair enough, but you know, it was that I felt like that was a bit pushing it with this huge 40-minute monologue on it. But there we go. And then also we've had like really great films like the film Alfane by Mello, where Rabatou does. Alfane was really good. We had loads of different ascents, like a proper old school community thing. And I think as well, we also had The Gold Standard recently, which is a fucking banger of a film by Keenan Takashi. And that's not particularly top level. That was 8C, right? But that was a that was excellent. It was very, very good, I'd say. Like one of the best climbing films I've seen. And I think that's fine because it rewards itself on better footy overall. And it allows for like more exposure of the brands. And I'm like 100% all for that. But I think what people are realizing is it is just that, right? Like you do this thing, like, I don't know, you put so much time, and in the case of some of these guys, they're doing multiple trips internationally to go to this boulder, like a huge amount of money they're expecting from sponsors and investment. And then the actual physical return of exposure is you get 1, maybe 2 good interacted Instagram posts, and then like footy. And that's about all you're going to get for your dime. And like, I think that like, where's the value proposition in that? Like, it's like sport climbing as well, man. Like, unless it's 9C, like you're going to struggle to make a good film out of sport climbing. Like, I can't really remember the last time I watched like an excellent sport climbing film. Like fucking Jonathan Seacrest actually doing 9B, like is it first or second 9B that he's done in America? Like how is Sportiva expected to make money off this? Like nobody's gonna watch it. I think more relevantly, you get these like large profile films. We saw it with Sean Bailey, right? With what's it called? Oh, fuck, I can't remember. Is the film that was made by Outdoor Research, who he's now actually no longer with after the he made a pair of trousers with them, and then they kept his fucking name on and didn't reference him or something. I don't really know. Yeah, that film was really good, and you get this like full profile. But I don't think you can do that. Like every time Bosi did a really hard ascent, if there was a full profile, I get a bit sick of hearing his Scottish roots and how he trains in the school and all that. So yeah, I think like the value proposition is hard to get from, but I think like, are we going to get to a point, right, where we see these ascents and then they're very algorithmically played, in the sense that like we might get like a teaser for the reveal of it or something, like has he done it, has he not done it, is there going to be like the fucking live stream? I don't even know. Like, are we going to get like are we going to get pay to view footy maybe? Like all of this, like I know there have been a few, like Real Rock I suppose is pay to view, isn't it? But yeah, like in what direction are we going to go in with in terms of like making revenue, because it is limited. And I suppose like returning to our original topic of the Aidan and Will thing, like where was the discussion there, right? Like, was he trying to do that? Was he not? Like, whose call was that? And fundamentally, I can only speculate. I can hear rumours fly and whatnot, but I can really only speculate about what actually happened. And I think it's just important to kind of recognise that, are we okay with going in that direction? Are we okay with the top level people in our sport potentially getting more money, but we kind of break down the community. And I think, firstly, I don't really believe the climbing community exists. There's a good climbing, curse climbing article on that. But do we break down like friendships and this kind of like nice cooperative spirit we have in climbing? Like, I think like we're pretty good. Like, obviously there's diamonds in the rough, right? There are genuinely like rivalries that are very toxic, like Marcus Bock and John Gaskins comes to mind, right? But do we risk breaking down rivalries breaking down like inherent friendships and this like inherent collaborative spirit between our top level athletes and guys pushing the sport for potentially more revenue? Like, is that a worthy trade-off? Are we going to get more gate-kept projects and stuff like that? Like, is that a thing that we're going to have to deal with for the case of making more revenue? And I think it's all just like a value trade-off proposition. Like, I don't think we really know what will happen. And I think it fundamentally is up to the companies, it's up to the management people of like, because I think the issue is as soon as one person starts doing it, the diamonds begin to fall. And if that person is Bosi, like if we start to see a lot of like, I think, I don't know, maybe if that Yena woman, I forgot her second name, she's from the Czech, if she does Terra Nova and then we see Bosi being like, unseen footage of me on Terra Nova come out, I will be a bit like, wow, okay, what the fuck is happening here? Like, he is fully going for it. And I think the sad thing is it probably worked. It probably did work, his thing. And I probably think Matt Bird and Bosi and Lattice and whoever the fuck sponsors him, is it DMM as well, are looking at this now and going, wow, this fucking worked. Like, should we just throw in for a penny to sell more pickup edges? Which I won't get into that now, but that's been another story of the week, the Lattice concave edge discussion. But yeah, I think do we move into that? I'm not too sure, to be completely honest. I think fundamentally, I think Aidan is changing the tune a bit with it. He is doing this for himself, and he's in a fortunate position where he's already kind of done that. Like, oh, okay, I've proved myself with the big grades. Now, kind of let me do my own thing. And I think we'll probably get a film out of him at some point. And the Mastery film was really, really well made. I was really, really proud, really, really happy to see that. And there wasn't like there was grades on that, but it wasn't like massively like a big part of the film, right? And I'm excited to see how this boulder gets portrayed. I hope we do get. I think if he either does this lawyer project, which is in Finland, that I think Gnarly's working on, fucking hell, what a legend. I hope we get that with the Midnight Footy and Spots of Time all in one film. That would be super cool, like a proper Britain's back, baby. We're climbing again. And I think last week I talked about how Charles Albert may have the purest style in climbing. And I think I have a lot of respect for Charles Albert in the sense that his motivation is purely his own. He is doing things that he knows. I think L'Ombre de Voyager, his 9A first ascent, which he said was 9A plus, in actuality, like it would like he climbs for himself, like purely. And I think it's like obviously Aidan like will hike Makitas up and his organic pads and Friction Labs chalk and all that, but Aidan I think climbs for himself, right? Charles Albert perfectly 100% I think climbs for himself. Like he's doing things that he knows will never get a repeat in the intended style. And like, do we just like are we gonna have brands that either favour or like dislike that because we don't get the really marketable asset of a rock climber being their big grade? Like, is that going to be the way we're going? Or like the big, like, this is really hard, like, please show me this, show me that. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting discussion. And I think in conclusion, it comes back to the same thing as most episodes of this podcast will, and that's fucking money. Money is the crux of it all, right? Like, it's determining if these athletes can go on trips, and there's probably a direct correlation between how many FAs you put in a year and how much you're getting paid from your sponsors. And all of that is going to contribute to like the climbing world that we're going to move into. And I think it's kind of up to us to kind of have these discussions now, like as a false community, and see like see where we can move in the future. Because I know the voice of the people isn't very loud, and I think fundamentally it's going to be the job of some marketing director somewhere to decide if what's actually going to happen in the end. But it's nice to think that we can perpetuate this sort of discussion and maybe influence our athletes to like act in a way. Because for me, and to say my opinion, I would very much like to see this spirit go, and I think it's like a not so far off thing really, that we like Instagram is already become very like a massive influence in climbing. And I think several years ago it was about getting in the magazines, and we had like that being the way of getting displayed. Now Instagram is like micro-analysed to shit, and yeah, that's the new way of like making money as a rock climber. And I think, not to repeat myself from last week, which I'm sure I've already done quite a lot, I think it's just the way we're gonna move, and we've got to like kind of think about this now, otherwise we'll be like uber fucked for the future. Anyway, yeah, I hope you've all enjoyed listening to this. I wanted to keep this one about half an hour and just kind of express my opinions on like the latest thing that's just happened in climbing. And yeah, it's been thank you very much for listening. If anybody has any questions, by the way, for next episode, it would be a real pleasure if you were to send them over, and I'd be more than happy to answer any of them. I'd like some I like the viewers to submit some topics, hoping to try and get some people on, maybe some Sheffield residents, whatnot, to kind of have like a discussion. I wanted to do like an episode on like mainly like the other way, like your motivation just getting fucking shut down, mainly using like James Pearson as an example, and maybe Dan Varian as well, like with Gaskin. So yeah, I've got like quite a few episode ideas in my head. So if you'd like to come on, you'd like to do anything, please let me know. Please discuss this with me. You know, message me on Instagram. Fucking do what you want. You know, join the Climbing Is Neither Discord. Talk to me. But yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I've been Matt, and goodbye.